Is Danny Ainge going to be the next general manager of the Utah Jazz? This has been a hotly contested piece of conversational material across dinner tables throughout the great state of Utah on the Wasatch Front. I don't know. It's very early. My point is, Utah Jazz fans are talking a lot about this, and now the stories about whether or not Dwayne Wade is lobbying Ryan Smith, the owner of the Utah Jazz, Dwayne Wade's close friend, Danny Ainge's close friend and college mate. Remember, Danny Ainge is a BYU alum. Is Dwayne Wade lobbying Ryan Smith to make significant changes in the front office? Well, if you believe the sources, Dwayne Wade is absolutely asking for change in the front office, and Ryan Smith is supposedly going to make those changes and supposedly going to hire Danny Ainge at any moment to be the next general manager of the Utah Jazz. Jake, is it a good move or a bad move?
I think it's a great move. I think, if you're going to make a major change in your front office, generally speaking, you want to do it for somebody who's proven and has shown that they can build contending teams. Now, the first reaction that I'm sure people are going to have is, well, the Boston Celtics lately have been a team that have underachieved. They've got Tatum and Brown, and they went through the Kyrie thing, and so they've just been this team that hasn't been able to get the job done. But when you look at the total package with Danny Ainge and what he's been able to do, he's won. He typically is in the playoffs, and I think. Not only is he in the playoffs, he's usually got a team that's going to contend to make deep playoff runs. And I think that experience is really what you're looking for in your next person. You need somebody to be able to come in here and identify the shortcomings of the roster, identify the opportunities in the roster, and figure out what exactly the direction is to get this Jazz team with Don and Rudy to the NBA Finals. Because I truly believe that is the sole focus right now. This past season, the expectation I feel like was to make an NBA Finals run. I don't know about winning it, but at least getting there I feel like was the expectation, and they just fell short.
I think there's no doubt that most Jazz fans felt like the Utah Jazz were the best team in the NBA, and hey, they had the best record, but I think the one thing that Jazz fans are is very emotional. And I think once you get away from this for a minute, which is what I think Ryan Smith is doing, Brylark, good morning to you. First in, says, I'm surprised they haven't announced firings yet. Usually it's less than a week before you hear about changes. Well, that's when you are a bad basketball team that ended the season at the bottom of the table, and you're going to make changes no matter what. And you made that decision probably 6 weeks ago. This is a team that people had expectations were going to beat the LA Clippers. This is a team that people had expectations would be playing the Phoenix Suns right now instead of playing golf. And I'm sure there are a lot of people who are expecting changes. I think Ryan Smith is doing the right thing. I would guess that Ryan Smith, the owner of the Utah Jazz right now, is doing some homework. I would guess that he is meeting with his front office. And if he's going to make a change, I would guess he's having those conversations now, Danny Ainge or otherwise. You don't do that the next day. I think you have to take time. It has been a very difficult week since the season ended, and I think the right thing to do is not act in haste or emotion. Take your emotions out of it and make good basketball decisions, and I'm thinking that's what Ryan Smith is going to do. I've heard for several days that Dwayne Wade is lobbying Ryan Smith to make changes in the front office, and I'm telling you, and obviously if you listen to this show, we've been lobbying for the exact same thing. I think you got to make a clean sweep. I think you got to move Dennis Lindsey on, and I think you got to do the same thing with your general manager and your scouting and player development and all of that. And you've got to hire somebody, and I advocate for Danny Ainge. I think you got to hire somebody that can build a championship team like he did in Boston. And to me, Jake, it makes perfect sense that you would make that change.
Yeah, and I also think it's a low risk change as well. I think it's it's one of those moves where nobody's going to criticize Ryan Smith for going out and getting a guy like Danny Ainge. We're not going to be able to sit here and say, hey, you got some college guy who was a huge risk and has no experience. I mean, Danny Ainge has won a championship as a player. He's won a championship as an executive, and he put together one of the best Boston teams that franchise has ever seen. So I just think it's a great move. I think if you're a Jazz fan, you're waiting to see. What is that first domino to fall this offseason? Is it, in fact, the front office? Or is it, we don't really hear anything for a while, and then all of a sudden a trade pops up? Or, I think, if you're a Jazz fan, you're looking and waiting for that, because that's going to tell you the mentality of this offseason. Is the mentality from Ryan Smith, hey, we had a good team, and we just fell a little short because of the injuries, and we're just going to try and do a little bit with this roster? Or is he like us and like a lot of people saying, hey, we need an overhaul in the front office. We got to make some major changes, and we need to get aggressive with that. That's, I feel like, what we're really waiting for.
Well, and I think you have to ask yourself, what does a championship caliber organization look like? And I think what that looks like is the LA Lakers. Right now, I think if you're looking at the Phoenix Suns, I think you're looking at the teams that you have to compete with on a regular basis, and you're seeing teams that are aggressive to change. I mean, the Lakers fired Magic Johnson. You have to do things that hurt. You have to do things that are hard. If you want to win, you have to go and do things that you haven't always done as an organization. And I think if you look back through time, the teams that were terrible, the Golden State Warriors, they only were able to change that because they made radical differences. The day that the Golden State Warriors hired Jerry West to be an advisor in 2011, I'll never forget that press conference. I'll never forget talking to Jerry West after that press conference happened in San Francisco. And you just quickly realized that the status quo was not good enough. And all of a sudden, the Golden State Warriors started drafting better and winning championships and doing all the things that you need to do to perform on that level. And I think that's the hardest part for teams like the Utah Jazz, because you feel like you were close when in all reality, you weren't very close at all. And so if you want to win a championship, you have to make a significant change. And that change is going to start in the front office, because you're not going to fire a coach, you're not going to make trades, you're not going to draft guys if you're going to change the front office. So it's been quiet and it's been silent for a very good reason. You don't have a whole lot of free agency to talk about. Mike Conley really is your only truly free agent decision you have to make, but you're going to change this roster. The only question in my mind is it Danny Ainge or is it Dennis Lindsey that's going to spearhead the change in this organization? And my guess is that Dwayne Wade has significant voice in this and impact in this. That's why you brought him here. Would you bring in Dwayne Wade if he wasn't going to have any influence or impact? I kind of think you would not do that. So I feel like all of the arrows are pointing in the direction of major change in the front office for the Jazz, because I don't think you're bringing Danny Ainge in as an advisor or somebody that you can call to ask advice. If you're bringing Danny Ainge in, it's to run the whole damn thing.
Yeah, it's his ship at that point. I mean, it has to be. I think the only way that Danny Ainge would be in an advisory role is if he were to stay with the Celtics. But I just don't see that.
That's over with.
Yeah, that's done. And so it just is. I think. I don't know. I think overall, the great thing about bringing Dwayne Wade in is that, he's got the on-court perspective, the player perspective. He understands the X's and O's and the tactical stuff that is required to win a championship. And somebody like Danny Ainge, or, if it's not Danny Ainge, who hopefully whoever they decide they'd like to bring in, assuming they make a move, is experienced and is, ready to go and has done this before. And I just don't feel like the Jazz are in a position with where the cap is at and where this roster's at and how all this went down this season to take any kind of risk. And that's why Danny Ainge is, again, the perfect fit. He's done this before.
But I think, and with all due respect, I just don't think there's anybody who thinks they're going to take a risk. I don't think there's anybody who thinks, this is not a risk. If you fire Dennis Lindsey and hire Danny Ainge, it's not very risky at all. Your upside is huge. I don't think anybody's talking about hiring a first-time general manager, or I think what the Jazz are doing is exactly what all great organizations, business or sports, do, which is you realize that you're good, you're not great. And to get to that next level, you have to surround yourself with people who have done what you're trying to do. Dwayne Wade would be one of those people. I think Danny Ainge would be one of those people. He built a championship organization, and I think that's exactly what Ryan Smith is trying to do. He clearly is a good businessman. He's a billionaire for a reason, and a tech billionaire at that. He has close relationships with guys like Dwayne Wade. I don't think that you should sell that short. I think when you realize that Dwayne Wade is here for a reason. He didn't buy into the Utah Jazz to be mediocre.
Yeah.
So my feeling is that you're seeing now that Dwayne Wade has influence. And I think it actually is a very, very good thing that you have not heard a peep from the Utah Jazz in a week. All you've seen is Donovan Mitchell at New York Met games. You've seen Rudy Gobert wandering the wilderness of Utah, which I'm perfectly fine with. I think you need time to make pragmatic decisions. And that's not, again, as many people are, fire this guy, trade that guy, cut this guy. Like, you don't do that. You have to take your emotion out of it. You have to take your fandom out of it. And you have to make, the word is pragmatic, basketball decisions. I think hiring Danny Ainge after you bring in Dwayne Wade as a minority owner, I think is absolutely the right way to go about it.
100%. Yeah, I think it's a great move.
Yeah. Let's see. Brylark says, I'm surprised they haven't announced firings yet. Driftwood said it's time for front office changes. Dante Mage says, I want to just keep saying this to manifest it. Lonzo. Brandon Whiteside says, Rudy for Wiseman and the 7th pick may even try to get Wiggins in the deal. Okay. I don't know where this idea came from, that the Jazz are going to trade Rudy Gobert. You realize Rudy's not even allowed to be traded right now. Can't do that until you get to, I think it's October 12th. And by the way, ask yourself, is it smart to trade Rudy Gobert for a rookie who's coming off of a significant knee injury that cost him half of a season? It's not smart. Like, that's the kind of deal that torpedoes any chance you have of competing next year.
And again, it's not about trading Rudy per se.
No.
I feel like the trade Rudy bandwagon started after Terrence Mann went off in that game, because it was Rudy who was supposed to be guarding him, and Rudy just left him there, and it's like Rudy, and it's like, no, man. Like, they schemed to leave Terrence Mann open in the corner because they just simply didn't believe that he was going to make all those shots. Do you want to have a conversation about adjustments in game on Terrence Mann? Sure, that's a different conversation. But my point, and what I'm getting at here, is that, what went down doesn't equal, hey, we need to trade Rudy Gobert. What went down in that game with Terrence Mann and Rudy Gobert means, hey, we got to get better defensively on the perimeter. That's you're asking a rim protector to guard a guard in the corner. That doesn't make too much sense. I mean, remember, this is a 3-time Defensive Player of the Year guy. I'm not the biggest Rudy Gobert fan myself, but I'm also not going to sit here in fantasy land and say that you should trade him for James Wiseman, who has a lot of proving to do and still has a lot of building of his body to do. That just is not a smart idea.
And by the way, Andrew Wiggins, those deals don't add up.
Yeah.
Andrew Wiggins has repeatedly showed himself not to be a big game player. The money doesn't add up. How in any world is that even a good for either side of that? And by the way, you're not trading Rudy Gobert to a championship contending team
in the West.
Why would you trade him to the Golden State Warriors? Yeah. Danny Ainge left the Celtics to retire. Why would he even be available? Michael Burton, he didn't leave the Celtics to retire. He left the Celtics because it was time to leave the Celtics. And I think everybody knew right from the jump that Danny didn't leave the Celtics to retire. I think that was the messaging that was used to facilitate the change that had to be made in Boston. I mean, something had to give. I'm still shocked that Brad Stevens replaced him there. Like, that's shocking.
Yeah, it's not. Yeah,
you failed.
I didn't love that. Yeah, I didn't love that.
There are some people in life who don't have to work hard and who everything is handed to them. Brad Stevens. I'm not saying Brad doesn't work hard. You just failed into some luck multiple times. Like, I just don't. How were you not fired as the coach of the Celtics after last year?
Yeah.
And then you had a massively disappointing season, and they didn't fire you. They promoted you. That, to me, is a shocking move out of the Celtics.
Guy's a good salesman, man.
Yeah, I mean, I just, that's amazing to me. How certain are you that front office changes are going to be made? Driftwood asked. Well, I'm not certain at all. I'm just reading the tea leaves and, NBA people chatting about Dwayne Wade lobbying, Ryan Smith to make significant changes. You get embarrassingly shown the door in the playoffs. I mean, that's not something that is an owner's going to stand by and just watch. I think it's very difficult to just stand by and watch.
Yeah.
So I feel pretty good about it. I think it's probably 85-15 that they're going to make significant changes in the front office, because you're not changing the roster significantly as much as Jazz fans want to talk about significant changes, and you don't have a draft pick that you can really trade. You don't have money that you can trade. You don't have a lot of contracts that you can trade. There's really only two, in Bojan Bogdanovic and Royce O'Neal. I mean, you're not in a position where you're going to be able to make those trades. And I also think, by the way, the Rudy Gobert contract is part of the decision to make change in the front office. Because remember, they only agreed to that contract last winter. So it's not like that was, this is years long. They haven't paid him a penny of that $205 million yet. So they're just starting that deal. You're not trading a guy that you just signed to the largest contract in franchise history. You're not doing that.
Yeah.
So I think the core of this team is good. The depth of this team, from the third guy down to the 15th guy, is not very good at all. You're not athletic. You're not. I mean, you lack a lot. If you look at the Atlanta Hawks, who we're going to talk about in a minute, look at the Atlanta Hawks. I mean, it is remarkable to me that the Atlanta Hawks are doing what they're doing. Well, it's not really that remarkable because they drafted and developed all the talent pretty much that's on that roster. Outside of Bogdanovic, by the way, who's hurt with this knee injury. I mean, you look at Trey Young. That whole roster is young, stacked, athletic players.
Well, and you notice what it takes to do that. It takes a couple of seasons of letting those guys play together to kind of start to figure it out, and there's a maturing process that happens. It wasn't like overnight they just turned into some championship caliber team. I mean, this is a team that drafted, developed, and now are very much outperforming their expectations. I mean, I don't think that anybody in their right mind would have had the Atlanta Hawks going to the Eastern Conference Finals. But you have, a team in Philly that, again, is largely a disappointment, as usual. They've been that for the last several years. And I think that the Atlanta Hawks just happen to be ready to go. And also, I'd just like to say that this is yet another team, much like the Suns, who is clearly battle-tested and able to win on the road. And I think that is another small improvement that I'd love to see this Jazz team make. A little bit more grit, a little bit more toughness, not as soft of a team. I would love to see that improve. That's a little bit harder to do, but it would be nice to pick up some toughness on the team.
Yeah, and I think that the lone major decision is going to be Mike Conley. I mean, and I think you're not going to invest heavily in Mike Conley. I mean, how do you justify paying Mike Conley? What would he command? 18 to 20 million a year?
Somewhere in there, yeah.
How do you justify paying Mike Conley 2 years and $40 million? Like, I don't know how you do that. Is Mike Conley really going to take a $12 million pay cut? How is that a friendly team deal? Well, let's say you non-guarantee the second year until he plays 70 games next year. You can't guarantee the second year unless he XYZ.
Yeah.
Is Mike Conley really going to do that when he knows he can go down the street and he can go to New York? He can go to, Boston. Boston traded Kemba Walker. If Mike Conley goes to Boston and gets an $18 million deal, a 2-year, $40 million deal, are you telling me he's not going to take that deal and he's going to come back to Utah and take a 2-year deal where it doesn't make a lot of sense, right? I mean,
for either side.
Yeah, I just don't understand I know Mike Conley's value. When he's healthy, when Mike Conley's available to play, he is an elite point guard in this league. He leaves you at the most important times. I mean, Donovan Mitchell's hurt. Conley gets hurt in that back-to-back Minnesota series, and he's never the same. Doesn't play in the Clippers series. And then when he did in the last game, he was a zero. He was a non-factor. You cannot count on Mike Conley. And it is, in my opinion, you would be very wise to suffer for a year, because a year from now you're going to have incredibly more flexibility on the cap. But you're going to have an opportunity with a lot of free agents that come up next year to really then impact this roster.
Yeah.
So I would not be all out, sell out, let's get Mike Conley back on a 2-year, $40 million deal. I think that's crazy. James Knight says, I know the Jazz underachieved, but is it an overreaction with all the hysterical trade talk? Well, I think for Rudy Gobert, it's an overreaction. I mean, a lot of people blame Rudy for what happened. It's not Rudy Gobert's fault. It's not. He is a limited player who was asked to do things he's not capable of doing. And I will again just say, if you're asking Rudy Gobert to protect the paint and the corner three at the same time, that's a you problem, not a Rudy Gobert problem.
If you're asking anybody.
I mean, it just is what it is.
Yeah.
Michael Burton says, Jazz definitely lack athleticism, and if there was a few added in the offseason with a core, this current season could go further. Yeah, I mean, you're going to have to move guys off the roster to add. You are hard capped, which means you cannot sign any free agent or acquire talent that costs you money. You cannot do that. You're hard capped. And right now, I think their tax bill is like $40 million. I mean, in a market the size of Salt Lake, it's tough to justify that when you don't win a championship. Burton also says, regarding Conley, could hope he has built up a love of the area, chance that this team can go all the way if he's healthy.
Yeah, but
again, when has he been healthy? When has Mike Conley shown you that you can count on him to be healthy to make a championship run?
not anytime recently and anytime in his career.
Always playing hurt.
Yeah.
Always playing hurt. Driftwood says O'Neal is a midget in terms of power forwards. Well, he's not a power forward. He is, in my estimation, I would look at Royce O'Neal much more as a 3 than a 4. And I can't remember who it was. Somebody on Twitter the other day was trying to compare Royce O'Neal to Draymond Green. And he's as physical. He's just like Draymond Green. No, he's not. He's not a 4. He's a 3. He's asked to guard 4s. And Royce O'Neal is a good defender. He's just not a guy that is irreplaceable. He is a guy that you can replicate.
The difference is Draymond can legitimately guard 1 through 5, depending on who the 5 is. He can legit guard small 5s, and he can play good perimeter defense, and that's because of his build and how strong he is. So again, I feel like with this Jazz roster, we're looking to just absolutely shred guys for their lack of ability instead of just saying, hey, this roster needs more.
Yes.
We have to move these guys, and we have to get guys who can do more. And, whether we're looking at Rudy and them asking him to guard Terrence Mann in the corner, whether we're talking about Royce O'Neal being able to guard 4s and also being able to guard a 1, and that's not Royce O'Neal. Royce O'Neal is guarding, primarily you want him guarding a 3, maybe a 4. But that's it. That's where he's going to be at. You're putting him on a wing player who scores. But I just think overall we have to stop saying, well, Rudy Gobert sucks, so we need to trade him. We got to stop doing that. Rudy Gobert has a specific skill set that's incredibly valuable on a team that's built right.
Right, but you have to acknowledge his limitations as an organization.
Agreed.
And
yeah.
I don't think this Dennis Lindsay front office acknowledges those limitations. And the scary thing? I don't know that Dennis Lindsay and his front office folks see Rudy Gobert's limitations. I don't think. How do I say this gently? If I'm Dwayne Wade, I laugh at the Rudy Gobert contract. When he signed that deal, Remember the Shaquille O'Neal, like most pundits around the NBA, laughed at that deal. It's an embarrassingly large deal for a player that is so limited. And everybody said, well, you just don't know Rudy Gobert's game. And well, it turns out we did know Rudy Gobert's game. When we told you that contract was a mistake, it's a mistake because the team and the front office and the talent evaluators of the Utah Jazz looked at Rudy Gobert with rose-colored glasses on, that he's going to be able to do this and he'll make up for that. And at the end of the day, none of that came true. None of it came to fruition. And it's mainly because you don't have the talent around him to allow him to do that. That's really what it comes down to.
And it's just not a difficult concept either. Like I feel like the Rudy Gobert situation, like we should be treating Rudy Gobert like pretty much every other big in the league and giving him extra credit for how good of a defender he is. I mean, think about other bigs in the league. Like, we always have the conversation about how Joel and Jokic are better scorers. Okay, yes, they're better scorers than Rudy, but they're probably not on his level defensively. I look at Valanciunas is a great example just because they went head-to-head, right? Like, him and Valanciunas battled. Him and Valanciunas banged for that entire series. So I don't know. I just think that, we're sitting here having a conversation about the fact that the Jazz are in a terrible cap situation this year, and they're probably not going to be able to do a whole lot, and they're going to have to wait till next year till some of these contracts expire. Well, part of that reason is the Rudy Gobert contract, and it's tough to me if you're Ryan Smith. It's tough to swallow the fact that they gave him this contract, and that happened before you were here. It happened before you were here, and now you got to deal with it.
It happened right as he got here, I guess, is the right as he began to take control of this team. But I also look at other bigs around the league that are limited, and I start saying to myself, hey, well, where is he in regard to Ben Simmons, who's often compared? Rudy Gobert is better than Ben Simmons. Where is he? Look at Giannis last night. Where is Rudy Gobert compared to Giannis Antetokounmpo?
See, I'd rather have Giannis.
And you know why I'd rather have Giannis? Because he hit those free throws. And he's not a great free throw shooter. But the thing about Giannis is that he at least can impact the game offensively throughout the game. Now he's at a 0 in the last 5 minutes. We saw it again last night. But he impacts the game significantly on the offensive end all game long for 43 minutes. And I think that's something that Rudy's going to have to develop and do. At the price tag, that he's at currently, man, if you're not able to impact the game offensively, boy, it's a real problem.
Yeah.
And you can see now that the Jazz salary cap is landlocked on that deal. And the problem was they couldn't score. They could not score. Now, yes, everybody makes a bigger deal over Terrence Mann, all these threes in the corner, and I got blocked on Twitter by Tyler the other day over Terrence Mann. The problem is you focus on Terrence Mann. I'm focused on the fact that you couldn't outscore the Clippers. That's what I'm focused on. I'm focused on the fact that, Joe Ingles, Bojan Bogdanovic, Royce O'Neal, Rudy Gobert were not factors offensively. And a lot of people will say, well, Rudy had, dunks and, oh my God. Yeah. And Bojan, all those threes, he was 6 of 7, and they lost. Because they could not. You have one guy at that point that you're turning to, because Mike Conley's playing on one leg, and Donovan Mitchell's playing on another leg, and you really, you have one guy, and there was no way that Bojan Bogdanovic was going to come through in that situation.
Yeah, and I also think the Jazz got away from who they were. In that first quarter, they were raining threes and everything, but throughout the postseason, it was clearly a talking point that the Clippers were able to, and really Memphis at times was able to get the Jazz away from what got them there, which was the three-point shooting, the ball movement, that style of offense. And I don't know. I don't like the idea of saying that teams are able to just do whatever they want to the Jazz and force the Jazz to operate in a certain way, because I think if the Jazz chose to move the ball, they could get a lot better of a look, but it just seems like they just get away from that. And again, I think that's because you're kind of in this gray area offensively. When this team is ticking and they're going right and they're 100%, the ball's flying all over the place and they're finding open threes constantly, and it's a real problem. But that's so rare for them because of the lack of athleticism and because, Don tries to play the hero ball and everything because he doesn't trust his teammates. So they need to make moves. The problem is it's going to be difficult to make moves. There's no other way to say it other than that.
It's interesting. There's a lot of comments on Mike Conley. James Knight, wasn't Mike Conley an all-star? Let's not hang a guy for getting hurt. Okay, well, it's not that Mike Conley got hurt. Mike Conley's always hurt. He's never, not one time in his entire career, played 82 games. Never. It's never happened, not once. Right? And if you go back and look at, throw out 2019, 2020, the bubble year, right, where he played, where he played 47 games. I look at 51 this year, 70 in 2018-19, 12 and 17-18, 69, 56, 70, 73. The last time he played in the 80s was 2012-2013 when he played 80 games. And it right out of the gate, he was hurt as a rookie. Mike Conley didn't get hurt. He's always hurt.
Yeah.
That's who the guy is. You knew that when you paid him or traded for him. And I would remind you again that you would love to have Jay Crowder, and that I'm not saying that trade's a mistake. It wasn't a mistake. All I'm saying is to believe that Mike Conley is going to all of a sudden start playing a full season and you can count on him, you're not.
Yeah.
You're not. Why do you think it was so easy for us to project in January that he would be hurt in the playoffs? Because he's always hurt in the playoffs. He's always missing games late in the season. Mike E says Mike Conley's not getting hurt. Exactly, Mike. He's always hurt.
Yeah.
That's the problem. Michael Burton says Gobert is only 28. He can still get better. I don't disagree with that.
But what does getting better look like?
What skill set is he going to add? Because what he needs is a back-to-the-basket game or a mid-range game. He's not going to ever have a mid-range game. That's just not who that guy's physical build is. If you find me a center 7-footer that's built like him, the only guy I can think of is Kevin Durant, and they're completely different body types. I'm telling you that Rudy Gobert needs a back-to-the-basket game. That's where his development could be. He needs to learn how to dribble the ball. Again, the numbers don't lie. I think he's 23% when you make Rudy Gobert dribble the ball once or more. I think his field goal percentage is 23%. When he doesn't dribble, he's in the 60s. I mean, do the math. The guy has no footwork. The guy cannot put the ball on the floor. He doesn't have an offensive game. Yeah. He is a dunker, which has value in this league. I agree with that. But you've got to be able to play with your back to the basket. A flip shot, a hook shot, the ability to bank the ball into the hole. I mean, any of that would be a major upgrade for Rudy Gobert. Because right now, I don't think even the most ardent Utah Jazz fan can't argue the fact he's awkward around the rim when he's not dunking it.
Yeah, and I think offensively, if he had any kind of, back to the basket game and he was more of a threat, that would open things up for you as a team that likes to take a lot of threes and likes to move the ball. Again, you look at these bigs, a big, basically from a basketball perspective, if you have a big that can be just even a little bit of a threat on his own individually and then can pass a little bit, which he has shown the ability to do from time to time. Doesn't do it a lot, but when they run plays for him, he has shown the ability to pass out from the paint to a guy on the wing. If he could get better at passing a little bit, just a little bit, and could get a little hook shot, that would open things up way more for the Jazz.
But I think if you look at the way this NBA is built, and I don't mean to belabor this point on Rudy Gobert, but there's no traditional center that is just back to the basket, go get me a bucket. Those guys really don't exist. I mean, Joel Embiid to a certain point, I guess, but Joel plays away from the basket. He's a mid-range player. He's not a guy that is, in the paint, throw it to him. He's a guy that shoots fadeaways. He's a guy that shoots little 12-foot jumpers, shoots a three. Clint Capella last night was part of the problem for Atlanta in the fourth quarter. I start looking at the best big men in the league, and they're all power forwards. I mean, this is the Tim Duncan conversation. Tim Duncan's best weapon was not a dunk. It was a mid-range bank shot that he mastered unlike anybody else. And that went on to think about, Pau Gasol with the Lakers. If you think about just all of the evolution of the big in the NBA, they've moved further and further and further away from the basket.
A guy like LaMarcus Aldridge, maybe?
Yeah, LaMarcus Aldridge is an interesting guy. Look at Al Horford. Jeez, I have no recall memory. Al Horford, who just got traded back to Boston because what did Boston need? They needed a mid-range big. They needed a big guy that could shoot and defend. That's exactly who Al Horford is. So they traded Kemba. They traded their point guard to get a power forward who can hit a jump shot. That to me is exactly what a big is in this league.
Yeah.
It just is one of those things where the big that is so limited really does not help you. Jordan Crabtree, Steven Adams is a great example of that. Steven Adams has a lot of value. He's a big bruising player. But is he on a championship team?
Yeah.
He's not.
What do you think of a younger big like a Jaren Jackson Jr.? What do you think of that style of big who's a little bit more athletic and gets up and down more, but obviously still has a lot of growth needed because he's a young player.
I think he shoots way too many threes. I think Jaren Jackson Jr. fell in love with the three and forgot you got to go to the basket. Now, I mean, when you shoot 28% from three last year, you probably ought to go to the basket more. And by the way, he's also a guy that's injured a lot.
Yeah.
So I know he can make the three, but a guy like that at least is a weapon to you because he's long, he blocks shots, he can defend, and he can make the corner three. So I think he's more the prototype of what's coming. But this league, I don't know how else to describe it other than to say watch the Western Conference Finals tonight. Ivica Zubac is very limited in this series. Today's big man has to be able to do like DeAndre Ayton. DeAndre Ayton can dunk on you, but the problem is he also has a myriad of little hooks and push shots and jumpers. And I mean, DeAndre Ayton, believe it or not, can actually shoot the three. They don't ever ask him to because you don't need him to do that. But the guy can shoot. He's got a jumper. He's got a free throw line jumper. And to me, DeAndre Ayton, that's about as far as I'm willing to go with a big. That's it.
Yeah.
And not to be a dick about Rudy Gobert, I just wouldn't have him on my roster.
Yeah.
I would rather take an elite offensive player than an elite defensive player. It's Devin Booker. Look how much better Devin Booker's gotten defensively than he ever, at any point in his career, Devin Booker's never been this good as a defender. Well, you always knew he was an elite offensive player, right? Look at Trey Young. Does Trey Young play a whole lot of defense? He doesn't. Trey Young needs to lift some weights, but Trey Young also scored 48 points last night and had 11 dimes and did it in the paint and did it with a three and did it with a shimmy. Now, Milwaukee's defense fell apart, and this is my other point before we move on. You can't be a team built on defense and expect to win a championship because you're always going to run into Terrence Mann in the corner or Bobby Portis not coming up on Trey Young of all people.
When did that change, do you feel like? Because it used to be in the league that the classic saying of defense wins you championships. It used to be like that's how teams were built. But I have to agree. I mean, I look at it. Maybe it started when like Steph came into the league, or like when the Warriors. You think it started before that?
It started when Magic Johnson came into the league. You realize that a gifted offensive player was always going to be better than a gifted defensive player. And I think the exception to those rules really went away when Michael came into the league and started dominating in the late 80s because the Detroit Pistons were not a gifted offensive team. They were a gifted defensive team. And that worked for a minute because they got incredibly physical. And then Jordan started lifting weights. And you realize very quickly you can body up Michael Jordan, but now he's got a little pull-up jumper, and now he's got a fadeaway, and now he's dunking on Bill Laimbeer. Because Jordan and Pippen together formed this dynamic duo of two elite offensive players that was always going to be better than an elite defensive team. And then the Rodman Chicago Bulls with Phil Jackson in that last three-peat turned into a team that was an elite defensive team that was also elite offensively. That's what the model was. And then the Golden State Warriors showed up and started shooting from the locker room and from the upper deck and making threes. And Steph is really where that three-point revolution took hold. And the league is always maturing and changing, and it's secular. You cycle through the Jordan rules.
Well, it's like the mid-range game coming back.
Yeah, the mid-range game absolutely is coming back. We went through a 3-4 year period where everybody wanted to shoot threes. Well, now we're in the gym playing basketball again, and so we're seeing these elite high school players that are in one-on-one coaching sessions. And what are they working on? Double dribble between the leg to the elbow extended for a mid-range jumper, because you can't just shoot threes anymore.
Yeah.
When we used to play ball at LA Fitness in Phoenix, several of the ASU basketball players worked out at that gym with their skills coaches, and all of them were working on three-point shots. Now, 3 years later, here we are, and all of them are working on mid-range games.
Yeah.
So the game has changed quite a bit, and I think that's the thing that you have to add to it. So Eric and Raleigh says passing from the post is a lost art in the NBA. The new market inefficiency. But what you're also seeing is when Rudy Gobert gets the ball in the high post and throws a laser to the corner, it's incredibly effective on this team.
Yes.
And I think one of the adjustments Quinn Snyder is going to have to make is you're going to have to teach, develop, and demand that Rudy Gobert pass. And if you can throw him the ball in the middle of the paint, guys will collapse, and he's just going to kick that ball out. And, not to talk about myself,
yeah, you are, pretty gifted,
for a guy who
In my
can't.
eyes, he's the greatest to ever do it.
Yeah, that's exactly my game in basketball. Throw me the ball because I'd rather pass than score. I got a little fadeaway game. But every weekend we play basketball, and every weekend somebody jokes about how they felt the ball go by their ear. Big guys, yeah, big guys have to be able to pass. And Rudy Gobert has to learn to pass. I think if you look at James Wiseman's already a really good passer. I think if you look at, any of the best teams, they all move the ball really well. Look at the Atlanta Hawks last night. Again, was just a virtuoso performance. Unbelievable. Look at the play that led to the alley-oop the other night, excuse me.
Yeah.
That play where Devin Booker intentionally dribbles into a double team, passes it to Jay Crowder, who throws it into the corner to a wide-open Mikal Bridges. Ball movement is what wins you championships.
And it's so funny. The Jazz thrived on ball movement. We saw it all season long. And what happened? It disappeared in the postseason.
Stopped. It absolutely stopped. It's remarkable.
And I don't know how you explain that.
Hero ball is how you explain
that.
that.
I guess so.
40, and this is what I said at the time.
You did. 100% you did.
45 for 45 it looks great on paper. It's terrible for the team.
Yeah.
Donovan Mitchell's 45-point game was unbelievable.
It was beautiful to watch.
And you lost the series.
Yeah.
I'm just telling you, it's not great for the team. Cody Strickland says, I wonder when the fireworks show is going to happen with the Jazz organization. I would think in the next couple of weeks. I would think a week to 10 days at most.
Yeah.
Because once the NBA Finals get here, pretty much, and I would guess this year because we're seeing everybody else coming back to the arena, the NBA Finals, and I think I've probably covered a dozen or so NBA Finals or something like that. What you see at the NBA Finals is you see all the meetings because all the head coaches are there and the GMs are there. And, it's like league meetings that aren't league meetings.
Right.
And a lot of business gets done there. And you have to, at that point, I think you have to be ready to go. And then the league meetings happen. And oh, by the way, then Summer League, it's the 4th of July. I want you to remember this. It's the 4th of July. The Jazz Summer League, I think, is in early August.
It is, yes.
All this business is getting done at Summer League.
Yeah.
I'm hoping we get to go to Summer League this year. But all this business gets done at Summer League, too. You've got to have your people in place. So I don't think it'll be long. Michael Burton says the Golden State Warriors championship showed that small ball with athletes wins, and the league started moving towards that, and the fouls called favored offense. Oh, there's no doubt about that. Brandon Whiteside says Ayton is the first overall pick. Jazz are not close to getting that type of pick. Well, no, the problem is not the picks that you're going to get now. It's the picks that you've wasted previously.
You had.
Yeah,
You were in that position. You never had the number 1 overall pick, but you were top 5.
That's why that's why you're in the position you're in, by the way.
Yeah.
Mirzinski, good morning to you. He says, I know that Chris Paul is coming back from protocol, but is it really going to help now Booker and Ayton won't have the pressure on them? They can just play their game. Oh, I don't think there's any doubt that Chris Paul adds to what the Suns did the other night. If you're the Clippers, I mean, it's got to be demoralizing to watch those 2 games slip away from you in Phoenix.
Yeah.
Because you feel like you should have won that. And typically, if Chris Paul wasn't coming back, if you weren't injecting an all-star, all-NBA caliber point guard, you would feel like, okay, well, the Suns role players aren't going to play as well on the road as they do at home. Cam Johnson's probably not knocking down all those jumpers. We're going to win games at home. We'll win our games at home. Well, the problem is now you're injecting what I think is one of the best mid-range players in the NBA, and Chris Paul. And you're what that does is that makes Ayton better, that makes Booker better, that makes everybody better.
Yes.
Because when Chris Paul's playing, and again, water's wet, Chris Paul's hurt in the playoffs. But when Chris Paul's playing, I mean, there's just so much more space on the floor, and the Clippers are already struggling, and you can see they're already demoralized. The DeMarcus Cousins shove of Devin Booker at the end of the game the other night, they're already frustrated and demoralized.
Yeah.
And now you add Chris Paul back to that mix. I think the Clippers are in a real – this is not the Jazz. This is not the Mavericks.
No, this is a complete team. And, I think Chris Paul coming back, what that really does when we get down to the nitty-gritty in a basketball game in L.A. against the Clippers, when the Clippers go on that 10-12-0 run, it allows the Suns to absorb that run and answer quickly because they can get to that mid-range spot so consistently. That really, to me, is what the effect of Chris Paul is, because like everyone was just saying, when you bring him back and Devin Booker can be off the ball and be primarily a scorer on offense for you, it just opens everything up, man. It gives you a lot of options and a lot of flexibility, and frankly, it allows you to win games on the road that you probably wouldn't have won otherwise. And I just think that for the Clippers is it's not a great thing. You're going to have to figure that out.
Yeah, and I think one of the more interesting parts of this series is Kawhi Leonard's absence. I mean, he's got a sprained knee. It's been a week, I guess a week and a half since that happened.
Yeah.
Like, does he make an appearance in this series? Because if Kawhi comes back, I mean, who knows what Kawhi would come back. I mean, that's an interesting wrench in the gears here. But I just don't see how the Clippers can win 4 out of 5. I mean, that's what they have to do. You realize that's what they have to do.
Yeah.
When you're down 2-0, there's only 5 games left in the series. It's a 7-game series. To win a series, you got to win 4 games. You got to win 4 out of 5 games.
And 1 in Phoenix.
I just don't see that happening.
Yeah.
I just don't see that happening. Mr. E says, what do you guys think about Joe Dumars? He built a team who makes number 1 championship, 1 NBA Finals, 5 conference. Yeah, the problem with Joe is he's employed. I think he's got some crazy title with the Sacramento Kings. But Joe's had a lot more failure than success. And I think Danny Ainge has dealt with, what are we even talking about? Danny Ainge and Ryan Smith are friends. They went to BYU together.
Yeah.
Danny Ainge has built a championship. He's a local guy. Like, if Danny Ainge is available, you're making that move. I mean, I think Danny Ainge would be great.
It's a no-brainer, man.
And my hope would be that he would keep Quinn Snyder. But, I mean, there's so many quality coaches available. And, again, my number 1 would always be Rick Carlisle. I think he's so good at developing young talent. But it is what it is. Jordan McDonald says Mike Conley's George Hill 2.0.
Yeah, except that George Hill plays and Mike Conley doesn't.
Yeah, and I mean, when listen, again, when Mike Conley's right, I mean, that guy he's still an elite point guard in this league. I mean, he's going to wind up, my guess is that the Jazz would like to have Mike Conley back. I can't see doing that on a 2-year deal for $40 million. I just think you're handicapping yourself. My guess is that if he doesn't come here, he'll have 2-3 offers. There's not very many teams that need point guards, frankly. I think about the New York Knicks. are the first team that comes to mind. I think about the Boston Celtics that come to mind.
Somebody will sign him. I mean, he's definitely going to play. It just is. This Jazz roster, we got to stop taking risk on players. Like, we got to stop signing the guy that's always hurt or like signing the guy that's got one skill set and that's it. Like, you can't do that anymore in this league. You got to have a more complete team than that.
I don't even know if I should read this. I'm going to read it because eBay the Sofa Surfer is one of our best.
Mm-hmm.
But come on. It says Jazz should hire Rick Pitino. Donovan would love that. They're both Louisville guys. Like, I'm trying not to make an Italian restaurant. I'm trying not to make an Italian restaurant sex and joke, but Rick Pitino's morals don't fit into our community. I think that's also, and if you think Ryan Smith doesn't consider that, you're crazy. On Rick Pitino.
Wow.
What about a sign and trade? Ace says, what about a sign and trade for Mike Conley? That makes a lot of sense. Well, does it though? I mean, so if you're going to sign and trade him, it's going to be a big contract. And the other issue is signing and trading Mike Conley. I just don't think that's an option. I think it's incredibly difficult to do it. There's so many restrictions time-wise. There's so many restrictions because you're hard capped.
Yeah, I don't even think you can do it because of the cap.
No, you would be able to. It's just you'd have to find the perfect dance partner, and that guy doesn't exist. I mean, there's just, and why would you? No, the complexity. Why would you bring the complexities of that into your boardroom? Like to me, you're either going to sign the guy or you're going to let him walk. That's it. And I mean, like what kind of money would you bring Mike Conley back at?
I mean, I'd love to see him in the mid-teens. I don't want to pay him 20. If he's willing to do 15, 17, somewhere in there, I could potentially see it. But if I'm the executive of the team and I'm the one making the decisions, the first place I start is calling around the league to see what people think of Bogey, trying to get his value and what I could potentially do with him. And then trying to identify a suitor to make a trade to free up some cap space. Because I do agree. Earlier in the show, we got a comment about like Alonzo Ball, who's a I don't remember if he's a free agent or if he is actually restricted, but he is available. My point is I would try to make trades to lower the cap, number and try to bring in some effective low-cost free agents that could do some things for me, And then next year, when some of these contracts expire, that's when I would go like all out, work my ass off to build a championship caliber team because I'd actually have the money to do it. I'd actually be in position to like build a championship caliber roster. Right now, I just feel like, right now you're just going to have to like, for lack of a better word, you're just going to have to kind of patchwork this thing together to get the money right. Like, that's how bad the situation is.
I just don't see that you have a whole lot of flexibility here. I mean, I think when you look at Mike Conley and you look at, you're hard capped for a reason. You have a lot of money out for this coming season already. I mean,
that's the thing with the that's the thing with the Rudy situation. If you look at the LA teams, just as an example, you look at the Clippers and you look at the Lakers, and both of those teams, with the way they built their cap, have anywhere between 38 to 45% of their cap tied up in two players.
Right.
And those two players are star players who can do every single thing the game demands. They're not limited. They don't have just one skill set. They can do everything. Now, the Jazz, for whatever reason, went with that same model. The problem is that one of the quote unquote superstars on your team, one of the two best players on your team, can't do everything. That's the problem. That's why this roster is in a precarious situation, because you committed all this money to a guy who has a limited skill set. Not a bad skill set, but a limited skill set.
How are the Lakers in a better cap position than the Utah Jazz?
Right? Like, if you're looking at their cap right now, you see that LeBron and AD are obviously making the most money, and everybody else, and again, this is the same thing for the Clippers, everybody else outside of AD and LeBron and Kawhi and PG are getting paid like 1-year deals or 1-year deals with an incentive late in second year on low dollar values, and that's how they're doing it.
Yeah, I think you're trading Kyle Kuzma. I don't think there's any doubt about that. I mean, right now, the LA Lakers only have $116 million in their active cap. Their total cap's 121. Now, they have a lot of free agency to deal with. I mean, they have cap holds for guys like Schroeder, Caruso, Talon Horton-Tucker. You have some guys you're going to have to deal with, but they have far more flexibility. That's amazing.
But that's a position you want to be in, right? You want to have your top end 2 best players on the team secured, and then you want to have flexibility with the rest of the roster. That's truly the mistake here. That's where the issues come in.
Yeah, and this is not to be a jerk, but this is where I go back to the Gobert contract. I mean, you're kicking in $205 million. You're paying him $40 million a year.
And that's what I'm saying. If you look at it in percentages of their cap, I can't remember the exact number of the Jazz cap. I think it's like 120 something as well.
126.
126. So you're talking about. If you look at it in percentages, I think Rudy Gobert is like 20 some odd % of their cap, and Don is another 20 something %. I mean, that's a lot, man. That's a lot for a guy who is limited. And I know I keep using the word limited, but that's exactly the way you would describe him. He's a phenomenal defensive player, but he's also big. So you can't switch everything with him. Doesn't have an offensive game. Like, there's limitations there.
Yeah, it's really frustrating. It is. Yeah, it's really frustrating. Hello from Manila, LVL 307. What's up with you? He says, "What do you guys think of this year's draft?" I think it's really shallow.
Yeah,
I think it's 5 players, and I think really if we're being really honest, I think it's Cade Cunningham and everybody else.
Yeah.
I think obviously everybody's on Jalen Suggs, but I mean Cade Cunningham's the gift here. I think there's probably 3 superstars in this draft. That's it. I mean, and you're going to find some gems, but I don't know. Anyway. That Rudy, $40 million.
Yeah.
That's frustrating with the Lakers cap. It really is.
Because they're just in a much better position, and that's the thing. Like, not only are you losing on the floor to, again, you had a successful season, you went to the postseason, you did all that, but at the end of the day, you're losing to these better teams on the floor, and you're losing in the offseason because of the choices you're making.
And
that's
he
hard
leveraged
to live with.
the Jazz into that contract too.
Yeah, they negotiated and they gave in, and I just would not have done that.
And everybody rips Rob Pelinka, and I'm telling you, the guy, when you pay that much money, and this is another reason why I think Danny Ainge is a good option in Utah. When you compete at that level and you win at that level, you have to identify lesser talent. You have to identify weed smokers like Alex Caruso, who, by the way, did you guys hear about this? He got arrested in the airport in Texas because he had a grinder that had weed in it.
Whoa, Grinder app?
Yeah, well,
Grinder app?
I mean, you know all about the Grinder app.
Grinder app.
But it's shocking that he would get arrested. Like, what are you doing, dude? Anyway, they are able to make the best of a guy like a Cantavius Caldwell-Pope, a guy like an Alex Caruso.
Ben McLemore.
Talon Horton-Tucker. Ben McLemore, who all he did is come in and shoot threes, because what did they tell him they needed him to do?
Shoot threes.
Shoot threes, and that's exactly what he did. And that's what this organization has to get better. They have to find the Ben McLemore. They have to find the Austin Rivers, the Mike James, the Talon Horton-Tuckers of the world. Like, that's the guy that you need.
Yeah.
And the Jazz have historically not been good at that. Where is that secondary player that it really complements, and it, not to go back and pick the scab, but it's like the Malone Stockton teams, the way they were built. The Jeff Malones, not the Karl Malones, the Brian Russells, look at Jeff Hornacek, look at the contribution he made that you were able to get from him. Like, those are the things that you don't have on this team.
Yeah.
That theory, that way of thinking.
Mentality.
That's what's missing from this team. And it's interesting to me that, it just, it's so frustrating.
It is.
Spence Checketts at ESPN 700 had Scott Layden on his show a couple of weeks ago. And it's fascinating to listen to that conversation, because you need a roster constructor in your front office, and that's why I'm into Danny Ainge. He's always been able to make big trades. He's always been able to fix caps. Like, he has vision. Like, that's what this front office doesn't have. They're not roster constructors. And it makes me crazy.
Yeah.
You're talking about Danny Ainge. Do I have to say anything more than Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum?
Draft.
Like, he drafts well. He trades well. Now, did Kemba Walker and Kyrie work out? They didn't work out. And ultimately, that's probably why he lost his job.
But you could see the vision in that at least.
But you can see why he did that.
Yeah.
You know, like that to me, yeah. Anyway, what do you got tonight? Suns, Clippers, Game 3, Staples Center. I'm going to take the Suns. I think this is going to be a blazing shootout. I think this is going to be a 120-120 game.
Yeah, I think I completely agree. I was going to go Suns as well, and I think that the physicality of Game 2 is going to carry over into Game 3, and I think it'll be really interesting to see how does Paul George respond to missing those free throws. Does he come out and give us a 38-16 performance, or are we going to get 25-5 Paul George? Like, what are we getting? Because I think for them to win, have any kind of hope in this series, they definitely have to win tonight. And frankly, for them to win, he's got to be 30-plus every night. And so that's why I say I think the Suns just have more breathing room. And with Chris Paul coming back, I think they have more options. And they're just a difficult team to deal with because you've got DA going well now. Like, Chris Paul hits the mid-range.
What's the issue? They didn't have Chris Paul. They got a huge performance out of Book. But on top of that, when Book didn't give you a huge performance, he passed well, and Ayton and Campaign crushed you.
Guy had 29 points. Campaign had 29 points. How's that even a reality? How's that happen?
A career high, 29 points. DeAndre Ayton, the problem is, if you're going to put all your chips in on stopping Devin Booker, and I think you should, you can't let DeAndre Ayton and Cameron Payne beat you. And they did. And I'm telling you, if Chris Paul comes back tonight, by the way, did anybody see this story about Patrick Beverley like cracking Ty Lue after the Game 2 loss?
I didn't see that. What did he say?
Like, and I'll find it's on Clutch Points. Had it, I think. Like Patrick Beverley going in on Ty Lue. I don't understand it. We called Ty Lue Bill Belichick with all the adjustments he makes. He's definitely going to find a way. But then he went in about, how coaches choke too. And it's like, what are you talking about, why would you be talking like this right now? Like, it's amazing to me. I think that the adjustments that you're going to get out of Tyronn Lue, let's see what he does. Because I think he out-adjusted the Mavericks. I think he adjusted and leveraged a limited Jazz team. But those options are not available to you against the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, there's not an obvious hole in the Phoenix Suns game. And again, that's because they play as a team. The ball movement is there when it needs to be. Devin Booker gets enough touches, and it's a testament to Monty Williams because he's the one that's obviously pulling the strings and telling this team how to play. So we'll see. I think it needs to be said that at some point as a basketball team, you can't continue to go down 2-0 and think you're going to continue to win series. You're defying the odds, So that's why I think that comes to an end in this one.
I'm going to go 126.
Damn, you really think it's going to be a high-scoring game?
It's going to be. I think it's going to be 126-121. Suns will win that game. I think they're going to shoot. They're going to shoot a lot of threes. I think the Clippers are going to come out and shoot a lot of threes. And I think this is going to be one of those games that's going to plod along, and then it's just going to explode. Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that all shakes out. All right, make sure you hit subscribe right here on the old YouTube machine. Because I say that because we're giving away an Xbox Series S, and let's pull up the sub numbers.
The good old YouTube machine.
The YouTube machine. Hit subscribe. But listen, a lot of people are like, hey, can I win now? I subscribed. You have to. Wow, we are at 1,110 subscribers.
Let's go.
Wow,
let's go.
That's pretty good. Here's what you have to do to win the Xbox. Before we talk about your boy John McAfee and your other boy, what's his name, Mr.
Jeffrey Epstein.
Jeffrey Epstein.
He was murdered in prison, if you guys don't know.
Here's how you win an Xbox Series S. You don't subscribe to conspiracy theories. You subscribe to the Monty Show on YouTube. And then you tag us. And maybe we should open this up as well to our podcast subscribers, because somebody on podcasts the other day on Twitter said, I don't watch YouTube. Should we open it up to
I guess, sure, yeah. I mean, hey, if you're a podcaster, let us know. We'd love to see how many podcasters are, engaged.
Yeah, if you're listening on the podcast, you can also hit subscribe. Tag us in a picture that shows you're subscribed to our content. So podcast, really it should be YouTube, but we'll let some podcast people in as well. So subscribe to the YouTube channel. Give us a tag on Twitter or Instagram with a photo that you're subscribed. The Monty Show, Monty, The Monty Show, that's me. SLC Supercar, that's you. SLC Supercars.
Me.
That's you. On Twitter or Instagram. If you don't tag us with a photo, you're not entered to win the contest.
Yeah. And this is really simple. Like, sometimes we get these random comments about, like, hey, bro, like, I followed you and 5 of your friends. Like, does that enter me? Dude, you don't have to go around following, like, random people, man. All you got to do is click subscribe, take a picture of it, a screenshot on your phone, and tag us. That's all you got to do. It's really easy.
Yeah, Mitch says, congratulations, you guys are making us watch ads. Well, okay. I mean, look, it's not our fault that we are the best NBA podcast on YouTube and people want to advertise with us.
You are what you are.